let's talk about religion while we're here, and I want to get back to your policies in the House of Lords. How did that happen for you? Because I don't think you grew up with it.
No, well, I didn't really. Although at boarding school there was chapel, and I mean, I was aware of the Christian faith. I had an aunt who was a missionary, actually, and she tried to have some influence, but she'd been a missionary in Kenya and in Nepal and leper colonies, things like that. I didn't see her that often, and she was considered by the rest of the family as a quirky person, sort of thing.
She'd given you a Holy Bible, I think.
She did, yes, that's right. And the verse inside of it was, I think, Psalm 119, verse 18, Lord, open my eyes that I may behold wonderful things in your law. And as a child, I used this leather-bound Bible. It was a valuable possession. I didn't really read it, except for this verse. And I never quite knew what it meant, But there was that prayer, Lord, open my eyes that I may behold wonderful things in your law. And that's what he did. He's been opening my eyes ever since. And I can behold wonderful things in his law. So I sort of grew up just, I would say, like anybody else. All right, except I was an island. I was a rock, I was an island. But worldly, I mean, in the 60s, you had the, promiscuity coming along. Drugs, thankfully, I never really got involved in. I mean, it was early drug days. Certainly, my father was an alcoholic. I started drinking a bit, but actually I had a very good piece of advice by a commissioner. In the city you had these commissioners in there. They used to be ex-army, and they used to have these uniforms, and they used to be messengers around the city. There was a chap called Sergeant Simmons when I was in my early 20s, and I think he saw me coming in with a hangover one day. And he just said, Michael, just let me give you a word of advice. He said, just stick to beer. He said, avoid the spirits, stick to beer. And I thought, well, that's good. Somebody gave me a piece of advice. Nobody else gave me anything like that. And it really stuck. And I thought, okay, I can see the danger. I've got the danger in my history, so I'll, and that's what I did. And I think that actually helped me a lot during the 20s, my 20s, when I wasn't a Christian.
In the late 60s when it was all kicking off in London.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you remember about the late 40s, 50s, 60s in London? Like what comes out? I mean, it was hard times for the city.
Yeah, I was born in 44, but right. Those days, and I didn't live in London then, we lived in Berkshire, but there were hard post-war days, and Britain was paying back debt to America, and it was a hard time. Rationing still went on, but in a way there was still that I won't say purity, but there was simplicity of life, and the family life, and those values were still there in society. Whereas when you get to the 60s, with particularly the pop culture and this sort of liberalization and this gradual acceptance of whatever goes. This philosophy I always used to think, just do whatever you want to do, just don't hurt somebody else, however you define that. But that sort of culture started developing. So I was, but I was by myself. So I was a rock and I was an island. So actually, when I got married at the age of 30, and that sort of changed our lives, and moved outside, and then the first baby came along when I was 35, and it was at that point I became a Christian, which was a bit of a Damascus Road experience.
And how did that happen? Because that would have been the last thing we would have ever predicted that happened to Michael Farmer at that time.
No, that's right. Well, I used to. There were a number of things that happened. We lived in the fields. We had a house out in the fields in Buckinghamshire, just cutting the grass, going for walks, just what I would call creation. You call it nature. The rhythm of it, the cycle, the fruitfulness of it. Seeing the apples on the apple tree, seeing the wheat grow every year, seeing the harvests come, seeing the seasons change. That was a big, slow influence coming in that, one was thinking about, what is this place? The stars in the sky, the moon, the sun. What am I? This conscious human being, which is hugely complex. The whole place is so hugely complex. We're only finding out how complex it is today, and yet it works. It works. It's extraordinary. So I had that sort of going on in my head the whole time. I suppose this exposure. I mean, the Psalms say, the heavens declare the glory of God. There is this speech that pours out from creation to every human being, no matter what language you speak. You understand it, and no man has any excuse. It's there. And I think that was pouring in on me. And then we had the first baby, and I was thinking, who's this? Who is this person? And it was just this new baby being formed, this new human being coming from sort of nowhere. And so that was really another thing. And there were a couple of other things. Local minister of a church quite some way away, he knocked on the door one night. And he said, my name's Nick Maloney, and I just come to see how you are. We've been there a few years, and nobody else ever knocked on the door. We were right outside. I'd come and have a cup of tea, and anyway, we got to know him a bit, and he never mentioned God. But I thought afterwards, well, nobody else has ever knocked on the door and asked us how we are. And then there was somebody we were trying to help who was having difficulties in their marriage, and we asked, my wife asked our doctor actually, how can we help? Because we didn't know how to help. And I don't think he was a Christian, but the doctor was an old man. He said, try and encourage her to mix with people who go to church. And I came back from work from the city, and I said, what? Try and encourage her to mix with people who go to church. That's a very funny thing to say. And then I thought, well, actually, they'll probably try and be kind. They'll probably try and help her. Actually, that's probably pretty good advice, actually. And there were these sort of things going on, which then comes a dramatic moment. So it is a Damascus Road experience that, I basically, in the middle of a night, just heard one word, which was Michael. Just
Clear.
It was quite clear. It was just Michael. And all I said, I didn't have any choice, was yes, Lord. And in front of my eyes was Jesus Christ as the Son of God. I mean, it was this sort of white knowledge, certainty, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And I thought, this changes everything. This just changes everything. I have to find out. I have to learn. Who is Jesus Christ? What does this mean? And I thought, well, I better start going to church. I thought I better start reading the Bible. I have to find out. I have to learn. And I would say that when asked about this, I said, if you want convincing that this was the Lord speaking, when I was thinking, I have to go to church, you know what thought next came into my head? When you go to church, don't let them make you treasurer. You have to learn. And guess what they did? I went to this little church nearby, and it was a little church. And here I am, doing reasonably well in the city. Michael, would you like to be treasurer? I don't know. And before I knew where I was in a teaching church in the city of London as well.
Okay.
And one learned, as a Christian, you never cease learning about God. He is beyond learning. So you're always on that journey.